Hello and welcome to the hands-on section. In this section, we're going to develop an end-to-end interface using the sender REST adapter. We're going to use a polling mechanism for the REST sender adapter to poll a REST API, and then we'll pull the messages from REST API for every 5 minutes, and then we'll drop the message in the FTP server. So I'm going to walk you through what is this interface all about and how we're going to develop it. So this diagram basically shows you the logical representation of an interface design. So let's say you want to draw an interface design diagram. You can draw something like this, very high level, to show how many systems are involved in the overall transaction. So left hand side always you denote as a source system, right hand side you say it as a target system. Left hand side is a REST API which exchange message via the JSON data format. Given you the URL, basically that is a REST API URL. We will use AEX sender adapter to poll to this URL using the REST adapter, and then we'll retrieve the data that's available using this URL using the get method. And once that is inside the AEX, we'll just pass through and save the data in the FTP server. And I'm calling this as an example 1. So as we proceed in the next section of the interface development, I'll call it as example 2. The reason I'm doing it to call it as an example 1, I will use that example 1 as a shortcode for object naming convention. So whenever I develop objects, I will say it as an example 1 so that you can refer back to what is example 1. So here example 1 means REST sender adapter. So this diagram again zoom in into AEX, keeping the source and the target system, right? It zoom in into AEX is showing what are the configuration objects that has been used. So left hand side, again these are all sender configuration, right hand side is basically all the receiver configuration. And if you look at the channels, the first channel is basically the CC REST sender REST API example 1 is basically a sender REST channel, right? And then I'm using an interface called SI non-exists. Basically this interface does not exist in ESR. I'm going to show you how to work with this. It's basically a simple trick. You can even develop an interface end-to-end in integration directory without any objects in ESR. If you're not familiar with this concept, maybe that's a learning curve for you on how to do it. Right, then I've used two business component. I don't develop this in the SLD. I just directly develop in the integration directory. Okay, so that's a business component. That's basically BS REST API sender underscore system and the receiver system. And then I'm using the shortcodes like example 1 for the service interface, and for the CC FTP receiver, that's basically an FTP receiver. So we'll pull the JSON message from using this REST sender, and then we will directly dump that into the FTP server. We're not going to use any mapping and no BPMs. Okay, so that's how we're going to develop the interface. So here is the object list defining all the objects that we'll develop in this interface. One thing to note, I have also developed a software component and a namespace, but as I have said, there's no ESR objects, but I'll still create this software component so that you know the steps, just as a refresh of how to create a product and a software component in the SLD, and then how do you import them in the ESR. So if you want to enhance this interface by creating objects in the ESR, then this steps will help you to organize your objects inside the software component. Okay, so software component, I'll say it as REST API. The namespace will be using the pocast.com, then the software component name, and basically the interface name. Right, then we'll create a folder in the integration directory as REST API as a top folder, and then we'll create REST2 FTP as a subfolder. So next section, when we do FTP to REST as a REST receiver, then we'll use the same REST API as a top folder, and then we'll create a subfolder. The business component we will directly create in the integration directory, right? And we'll use a REST API sender system and the receiver system to represent sender as an JSON server and receiver as an FTP server. Okay, so I'm not mentioning the protocol here. Remember, the business component is representing a business or representing a machine, not the protocol. The service interface, still again, this one is not defined in ESB or ESR, and so we will not be developing an interface or data type or a message type. We just say SI non-exist as a service interface in the integration directory in the configuration, and then we're going to build the interface. Then we'll create two communication channel. One is REST sender example1 as in shortcode to refer that example1 is nothing but a REST sender adapter. Then FTP as a receiver. Then I will show you how that file will be dumped into one of the FTP server. Then there is a URL that I'm going to use. I'll attach this in the document section, then you can refer back to this URL. Okay, this is basically a free API server, like a fake API server provided in the internet. You can just use it to make your REST calls. So we'll use this for our practice, and we will pull the message from this REST API and then dump in the FTP server. Okay, remember there is no ESR objects for this interface, so everything will be developed in the integration directory itself. Let me show you how to develop this interface.